And this is the Mage TMW profile for patch 7.0, and just like the Rogue and the Warlock, it covers all 3 specs. Right now here we are in Arcane, and all 3 specs will have a general opener programmed into it so you know what you can do. And with Arcane in particular, there's 2 types of rotations. There's the Mana Spender rotation, which we're in right now, and the Mana Conservation phase. And that's all revolving around your Evocate cooldown. And I have it set up so that when Evocate is on cooldown and won't be up in a reasonable amount of time, it will go ahead and have you go right into the Mana Conservation phase, where it's a lot more Arcane Missiles, a lot more Arcane Barrages, and just dumping your mana as much as you can. The whole aspect of Arcane is about trying to stay in the mana spending phase as long as possible, which is where Mastery comes into play, as it increases your maximum mana and allows you to cast more Arcane Blasts. But that will come down to gear. My gear isn't fantastic, so while I can burst to about 100k, I maintain about 49 to 50k DPS throughout the rest of the fight. And definitely better geared mages will be able to get more out of the spec than I. But yeah, Arcane, just like all the other specs, will display all information right in the center of your screen and suggest to you the best thing to cast at that given moment. Fire is a little tricky in that it plays on a sort of prediction system where you have to predict when you're going to get your next crit, and unless the target's at 85% health or higher, with the Fireball talent, you're going to have to play that game. So I tried to make it so it'll try to predict that you're going to get a crit. It's always taken the assumption that you will get a crit, and so you want to play it in that mentality as well. And just like Arcane, it will provide you what is generally the best opener, which would be Pyroblast, Fireblast, Fireblast, Pyroblast, just back and forth. And what you'll see here a lot as well is a lot of double casting with a Fireball, Pyroblast. That's an attempt to try and get an instant proc. It'll also suggest Fireblast at the very butt end of a Fireball, just so that you can cast a Pyroblast right at the end and get another proc for you. It'll also highlight Fireblast if you have no hot streak or heating up, and that's also in the hopes of getting a Pyroblast proc right away. Other than that, it'll track all your cooldowns and everything else accordingly. It'll suggest the Rune of Power just like Arcane. Living Bomb is there on the top left. It is the cooldown tracker. It's not tracking the debuff, and that's because the cooldown's more important. The debuff is 3 seconds. It'll explode when it does, and it'll AoE if it does, and go from there. But the cooldown of it is what you want to track for AoE fights. And finally here for Frost, once we get our mana back, is the spec functions on the similar principle. Frost has a ton of different abilities that can be added into the rotation based on your talent choices, and all of them are set in the priority list accordingly. The first thing here is Ray of Frost. It will always suggest to use Rune of Power when Ray of Frost is available, and it will always make sure that there's one Rune of Power charge available for it, so be ready for that. Other things here, I changed the icon for Water Jet. As you see, it's the bubbles there, and that is because it shares the same icon as Water Jet, or sorry, Ray of Frost, and it makes it very confusing as to what you should be casting. So I just changed the icon to another watery type of icon so that it's a little easier to understand what the add-on's trying to tell you. For the Flurry debuff, it'll tell you to do 1 Ice Lance, and it's just, there's a lot going on here. But at the root of it all is it will tell you to cast what is the most ideal thing to cast. Water Jet will only be suggested while you're in the middle of a cast of Frostbolt, and that is so that you can get the 2 casts off and get that extra Ice Lance proc. But yeah, everything here should be working just fine. One thing I wanted to bring up is that there's been a lot of talk in the last few days about what's the purpose of an add-on such as these, or what are the purposes of add-ons such as these. And at the root of it is that these are not meant to replace your skill, they are meant to be a helper. I still would highly recommend that you head out, read up on your class, and get the best out of it so you can get that extra 10%. But yeah, I hope you guys find this useful, and I will catch you guys later.